You're live.
I see some names. Hi, everyone. This is Kathleen Lingo and Miss Penny Lane here for a live chat on Substack today. Thanks to all who are joining. I, for one, am so excited. And I know from the feedback I've gotten since I posted this chat was happening, Penny, everyone else is excited too, or many people are excited too. So
I'm just excited to be talking to my sister in bangs.
we look like
Have you always had bangs? I've always had bangs, like my whole life.
I've gone through some periods where I didn't have bangs, but I never really felt like myself. Like I've always been like, I should try different hairstyles. I've had every hairstyle in the world. Have you always had pretty much the same hairstyle?
No, I used to cut my own hair, so I've had a variety of bad haircuts that but yeah, this is very but the bangs have been consistent because I think my forehead is too big to not have bangs. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you feel like you're hiding something like I do, but for me, it feels entirely about hiding my forehead from you all. My horror forehead. Because some boy I had a crush on in like 6th grade made fun of me and said I didn't have a forehead. I had an 8 head. And I can still hear his voice in my to this day.
So crazy. I was thinking the same thing too. When I was little, people used to tell me I had a big forehead.
It's like, why we have bangs today.
But it's also helpful as we're trying to, keep our youthful appearances to hide as much of your aging skin as possible. It's like, what aging skin? It's all covered by hair.
What do you mean?
Well, we're not here to talk beauty. We are here to talk documentaries.
No,
and I definitely don't think you need any introduction, but just really quickly, for those who don't know, Penny Lane is the director of many films that are beloved, from Nuts to Our Nixon, the Kenny G doc, which I feel like is a lot of people's favorite docs. Like, I feel like that's just something that always comes up in conversation. And the one thing that really always stands out to me about your films, Penny, is the humor. And your voice is so defined as a filmmaker across all of your films, even though you've covered such a range of topics, from Satan to your latest on children's music. The Penny Lane directorial vision is always evident in your films. So I would love to honestly kind of start at the beginning. I mean, I've watched your work for over a decade. Decades seems like too long, but over a decade seems right.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's not.
But I also don't really, you're very vocal, on Facebook, now on Substack, but just to kind of start the brass tacks, like, who are you, Penny Lane, and why did you decide to become a documentary filmmaker?
Wow. I think that I loved school growing up. I was a little bit of a nerd. Like I wasn't athletic. I wasn't super popular, but I always got like good grades, and I just like loved school. I like loved learning things, and I loved books. Like reading was my first love. I was like very deeply introverted and like artistic and like bookish growing up. And I came from a very working class background. So I never would have imagined like being an artist for a living. Like that was not like on the table. Like it never even would have kind of crossed my mind. But I loved school and I was good at school, and I ended up going to Vassar, and that was like such a big deal. Like people in my family like don't go to college. It's not that kind of thing, but it was a really big deal for me to go to Vassar, and I feel like that's where I became like me. To the extent that like, there ever was a one time in my life. And it was really like, so my love of education is kind of what eventually transferred. Like, so as an undergraduate, I was not a film major. I was not a filmmaker. I was not at that point in my life. Um, I didn't have anywhere near the self-confidence that you would have to like make art and show it to your peers and show it to your professors and ask them to give you a grade. Like I cannot fathom doing that. And when I became a professor, jumping ahead, of art later, I would always tell my students that, like, showing up to a class where your job is to, like, make art and present it to people, like, is such an incredibly brave thing to do, and I didn't have that courage or that sense of self at that age. So I was interested in, like, media and, like, film studies and, like, media studies and communications theory, and I wanted to be a professor, and that's what I became. I, like, sort of gradually kind of, like, entered the educational field. And I ended up doing an MFA in video art, which, like, probably most people on this have never heard of. Um, but it's, sort of the fine art, moving image, but in the fine arts tradition. That was, like, where I kind of, like, stumbled into an MFA in video art, and I tried to be an artist. I tried to be a fine artist. And I didn't really succeed in that. I kind of never really found my voice in that field, and I think it just sort of was because I actually just wanted to tell stories, and that's not really what you do in video art, and so I kinda just gradually shifted from being a video artist to being a filmmaker, and I always was interested in nonfiction exclusively, and still am, and I would never say never. You never know what's gonna happen in your life. I'm still only in my 40s, so, like, maybe I'll develop a new interest later in life, but, yeah, it's still pretty much, like, nonfiction or bust for me. Like, I never had huge in desire to enter into the fictional film space. So, yeah, that's kind of, like, the shortest possible capsule I could give you.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting what you say about nonfiction. I'm just curious, do you read a lot of fiction or watch
Yeah,
fiction films?
definitely, yeah. It feels so completely unrelated to anything I do.
Mhm, mhm,
Like,
mhm.
unrelated. Like, yeah, I understand that there are many things in common, of course, but, yeah, it just feels like a totally different game. I like the constraint, like, like, I think art is, like, about constraints, and I like, it's like, I like to imagine myself as, like, an escape artist, like, and I like all the great art that I like feels like the artist has, like, set out these impossible constraints for themselves, and then you kind of watch them, like, escape. And so I like the constraints of nonfiction. I think that the constraints of nonfiction are interesting to me. The idea that you have to tell an entertaining, engaging story and package it up into something that plays as a story in, like, a three-act structure or whatever structure you're thinking of, that has stakes, that has, like, conflict, that has human drama, but is essentially true, is to me the game. Like, that's the game I wanna play. Like, like, kind of obeying the ethical constraints and, practical constraints of nonfiction while trying to figure out how to tell an engaging story. Like, that's the escape art that I specialize in, and it's the one that I
Mhm.
like the most, and I feel like if you gave me a blank piece of paper, I'd be like, "I just don't know what to do." Like, what would I do with this, you know?
Yeah, that actually tees up really well one of the questions I had for you, which is talking about documentaries and truth. I feel like you've always engaged with that in your work and, doing the like alongside Nuts when you went through and sort of listed everything in there as sort of these the granularity of truth. And, I used to work at the New York Times where we fact checked every single film I ever worked on there. There's this interesting relationship that nonfiction storytellers have with the truth because it's not a one-to-one ratio. Um,
Right.
and it also comes out in your different in different ways in different films. So talk to me, like, imagine right now that you're talking to a group of people that love documentaries but don't understand how they're made. Like, how do you educate audiences? Like, how would you this is like a media literacy class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, how do you educate audiences about truth in documentary? Because I think the audiences come with a lot of assumptions that just everything they're seeing is literally true, which, as we know, is like impossible and not the case. And I talked to Robert Greene once, the amazing filmmaker who also teaches journalism, and he told me the first thing he tells his class is the most set up construction you can have in documentary filmmaking is an interview. So, what's the Penny Lane sort of overview that you would give audiences on what the relationship between truth, little T and big
Mhm.
T is in documentary?
Well, I mean, you can get really caught up on like these definitions of truth. Like I tend to sort of just like say like accuracy because I feel like accuracy is a term that people understand and don't get all wrapped up in like these confusing, what do you mean there's my truth and there's your truth and there's the objective truth? It's like, okay, well, let's just say accurate. Does that help? Like, let's just say, I think a documentary film, I think if you call your film a documentary, you are making a type of ethical contract with your audience. Like, period. The end. Like, I don't get down with like just making shit up and calling it a documentary, like at all. Like, I think that's wrong. Um, and not helpful, and like doesn't help our society at all. Like, so I would try to say like, I'm trying to be accurate to the material reality that we share, and it's very important ethically that we try to be accurate to the material reality that we share because this is the material reality we have to live in. But then the next thing I would say is that it's, again, like the first, I guess, maybe even the first thing I would say is that a documentary has a director, which I don't think most people really think about. Like, it seems like the kind of feeling about docs is that like there's a subject in the world kind of laying there inertly on the ground. And all I did was pick it up and like hand it to you. And it's like obviously not the case. Your job as an artist is to leave out almost everything. You have to leave out almost everything. Like not you don't get to keep almost anything at the end of the day if you're making like linear art, especially a film, like even a feature documentary film has like, I mean, because you work in journalism, like I always would say, like a regular long New Yorker article has more information in it than a documentary feature. Like more information, like more facts, more like numbers, probably, you know what I mean? Like we really don't get to say much. But yeah, you have to like be clear that there is a director, that there is a shaping process. And that's what I was saying earlier when we were talking about the escape art of it. Like, I think that's the cool part is like, okay, I cannot be inaccurate. I cannot be untruthful, but I have to try to like shape this into a take. And so, I did a master class on making real people into characters at Big Sky a couple years ago. And I talked in that talk about like the idea that when you take a real person, just use the example of a person, because there's also stories and a lot of, events and all that other stuff, but let's just talk about characters. You take a person who's a real person and they are like a 360 person with a whole history and, opinions and dreams and experiences and things they say and things they feel and your job is to leave out almost all of it, but to understand, like, for the story that I am telling, which aspects of that person's like 360 everything are relevant to this story. You have to take a whole person and reduce them to essentially a persona. It's just like not a whole person anymore. Now it's a persona. So the trick is it an accurate persona? Is it a persona that if someone watching my Kenny G documentary were to meet Kenny G, would it bear any relationship to like the person they met in the movie? And it always makes me feel really satisfied when the answer to that is yes. Because you feel like, okay, at least I think I've done a pretty good job of like distilling. But it's never the same list of things that someone else would have done, especially the subject. I mean, like if Kenny were to make his own documentary film, I'm pretty sure he would have chosen a completely different list of things about himself to include than what I included. So anyway, so that's kind of part of it. It's like a starting point. It's shaping reality into a story. But like anyone who's ever told a true story knows that there's like a great deal of artistic license. Like if you're like telling a story you've told a million times and you're killing, you're probably like shaping. You might be exaggerating. You might be like, leaving some stuff out for comic effect or for dramatic effect. You might be kind of conflating like different events together. Like these are all things that we know from our own experience of telling true stories. And I would also say, what my answer should have been when you said, "Who are you?" I am a person who I have diaries going back to when I was 12. And I was, like, very concerned about being a liar, like, even at the age of, like, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like, I was really worried that I lied more than other people or that, like and I don't think I do. I think I just have some kind of, like, scrupulosity around this, like, some sort of, like, moral scrupulosity that most people maybe don't even have. But I've always been very concerned with the truth and telling the truth and being honest, being authentic. Like, it's nothing is more painful for me than, like, not being able to, like, tell the truth in a given situation, and so, yeah, so I am very obsessed with the truth, even though I know that it's like really hard to reach in most cases. That's why I think Errol Morris was so important to me coming up, that like he's so committed to finding the truth, even while acknowledging that sometimes the truth is impossible to find. And you were talking earlier about like one-to-one relationship between like truth and film or something. I mean, I guess I would say that most of human experience just can't be fact checked, right? Like, this is something I'm sure you experienced in your time with the New York Times, trying to subject these films to fact checking. It's like, it just goes only so far. Like, when someone's like telling you a story about a thing that their grandmother told them, like, it's not fact checkable. Like, most of what we experience and what we put in these films are not facts that can be checked, you know? So, it's also important not to reduce truth to like facts or factuality, because that's not the substance of our human lives in most cases. You want to be accurate and you want to have the facts that you do present be accurate. But yeah, it's just not the game we're playing, you know? And I have to say also, sorry, I can go on with this forever. I'll let you ask another question in a second, but it's an image based medium. And when you brought up the Footnotes project, for anyone who's not aware of what this is, I made a film called Nuts, and then I made this website, which you can look up, called Notes on Nuts. And it's 323 footnotes to the film. And each footnote is about like an assertion made in the film, like an assertion of fact or an assertion of truth made in the film. And it kind of categorizes them from, okay, this is like as close to we get to like journalistically fact checked as we can have, which, you know, is its own thing we could discuss. Like, that's not like proof of anything, but, you know, like reputable people say this is true. Okay, fine. We'll call that fact checked, you know, all the way down to like, I made this up for like artistic effect. And it's kind of like each thing in the film is categorized. But one of the reasons that broke my brain trying to do it and why I've never done it again is that we're in an image-based medium, and pictures, images, are not factual or not factual. Like, images do not make claims about reality. Like, I can say in words, Penny has brown eyes. And that is a lie. That's an incorrect statement of fact, right? But if I took a screenshot from this conversation we're having and I photoshopped it and made my eyes brown for some reason, I've done something, but I don't think I've told a lie. Like, truth and lies are verbal concepts. They come from the world of words, and we are in a visual medium. So the whole construct falls apart super quickly if you try to fact check and, like, you know, really go through your whole documentary. It's like, well, what are you really annotating here? Is it like the way you use this image? Does this image like is the stuff around the image essentially adding up to a lie? You know, like, is the words around the image what the lie, where the lie is? You know, so the image based thing is really confusing, and where it gets really hard to have these, like, you know, straight conversations about like what we are required to do.
Yes, but I would also say, as someone who has fact checked many documentaries, I always there's all to me, there always has to be a visual fact check as well as a textual one, and the two things have to happen simultaneously,
Mhm.
because I think there's a really interesting tension between, like, acknowledging that truth is constructed and then telling stories that go too far in the opposite direction. And where I've seen the biggest issues come up is through omission. And you were talking about creating characters
Mhm.
so that, like Kenny G, like, you created the character of Kenny G for the film, but your goal was that if someone met Kenny G, they wouldn't think the two were super disconnected. And
Right.
oftentimes, I feel like for audiences, with all of this conversation around the complexity of constructing truth, how are then audiences supposed to know what they can trust?
Mhm.
Like, how does someone know that the
Mhm.
truth that is being constructed in a nonfiction film is
Mhm.
something they should believe and see?
Mhm.
Because, for example, the Melania documentary, right?
Mhm.
Like, that's a piece of, I mean, in my opinion, propaganda, right? Someone else might not agree with that. But I think it's just like a really interesting moment to deconstruct the trust that audiences have
Mhm.
in storytelling. Like, how do you, Penny Lane, as a consumer of factual
Mhm.
information, factual content, how do you know what to trust?
Well, I mean, it's a super complicated question because many things go into it, right? Like, the first thing I would say is that if you're a documentary filmmaker, like, the trust of your audience is, like, the main thing you have to play with. Like, you can play is even not even the right word, rely on, like, you need it. And it's actually quite easy to lose, I think. I certainly watch plenty of documentaries where I feel like that trust gets really obviously violated, like, pretty early in the game. Like, so every film kind of constructs its.
Can you just give an example? Like, not the
Yeah,
film,
if I
like, don't
it's
you have to
like
call out a film, but
no, of
just,
course
like,
not. I
what's
wouldn't, but,
something
like,
that
if
you
it's, like
know?
if it's, like, really obviously manipulative, like, if, like, I feel immediately upon, like, hitting play on a movie or, like, stepping into a theater that, like, every decision is being filtered in a way where, like, it's, like, trying to manipulate me into, like, feeling a certain way or believing a certain thing, like, I just lose trust immediately. Like, it's this just me. Like, I don't think that's an average viewer. Maybe it is, actually. I shouldn't say that. It might be the average viewer, too. Unless, of course, they're manipulating you into believing something you already believe, which is most of the time what we're experiencing, and then we love it, and it's like,
I
great,
love
very
that.
trustworthy, very trustworthy
Confirmation
news.
bias.
Yeah, yeah, the confirmation bias thing is very real. But yeah, so I feel like, there's a way in which, like, a film has to kind of build its own every film has to build its own kind of user guide for the
Mhm.
viewer. And the choices that are made, especially in that first 20 minutes,
Yeah.
the hardest 20 minutes of the movie, are what tell you as a viewer how to understand the type of truth that's being presented.
Mhm.
Is this a 2020, like, special? Is this a Michael Moore film where, like, the subjectivity of the filmmaker is very clear and, like, kind of on display? And at least and there's a lot of jokes being made. Like, people understand that jokes can contain different type of truths than, journalistic statements. So, like, the film has to kind of, like, tell you in what way to experience it. You know what I mean? Is it a dialogue-free art film? A dialogue-free art film is making a very different type of, like, user manual for its viewer. Like, you're understanding the type of film you're in a very different way. A Robert Greene film announces itself very differently than a Don Porter film. And so, each one of those filmmakers has to, like, earn the trust of their viewer, but they're sort of doing it in a different way. Like, people want to feel like they're being guided, that they're in good hands. So, in fact, directing is, not about, like, presenting objective reality. It is, in fact, about asserting, a kind of take. I think someone in the comments said a point of view. All that's very important, but you have to also, like, sort of give the viewer reason to trust you. And that's hard. I mean, I think that's really hard. So I don't know that there's a super obvious answer about, like, but I do know that people will feel betrayed if you present your movie as, like, kind of a 2020. I don't know why I'm using 2020 as the example. Is that even on anymore? Like, like a 60 minutes piece. Again, is this even a thing? If you present it that way, but then you make artistic choices like an art filmmaker, like,
Mhm.
your audience is going to feel betrayed. And,
Yeah.
and they probably should, you know what I mean? Like, so it's sort of like, the context in which you encounter the film really matters too,
Mhm.
right? Like, are you at an art film festival or are you on CNN, the CNN app or something?
Yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to answer or even navigate. But one thing I often think about is, like, how do you guide yourself in the process of making it? Like,
Mhm.
how do you sort of try to stay true to, like, your own values or whatever? And I try to think, like, if my viewers actually did have access to, like, the complete roadmap of all of my choices, from pre-production to the end of editing, and, I'm doing sound design right now, right? So I'm also thinking about, like, oh, I put in the sound of a person riding by on a bicycle. It didn't actually happen. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
So if everyone could somehow have access to all those choices, would they fundamentally still trust me, or would I lose them at some point? And I don't know, because we'll never know, because people will never have access to all those choices. But it does help me to sort of think, like, if this came out or something somehow, like, should you lose trust in the film? And I think it's a very, again, it doesn't, like, necessarily, you never have an answer to it. And also, people are sometimes very upset about choices that you make that you never thought of as being complicated. Like, you know what I mean? So
Like, give me an example.
it only goes so far.
Well, like,
Um,
I saw you recently posted a video about,
Raffi.
your recent about Raffi. Like, so for people who haven't seen it, Penny's latest film is about children's music, and Raffi, who's, like, the most famous children's musician, is not in the film, and I guess, like, were you getting, like, hate mail about
No,
that? Like,
I was
"Do you
getting hate
not
mail.
know
That
about
was
Raffi?"
it was a playful thing, but, like, yeah, there were some, like, angry letterbox users who were just like, "The movie's great, but, like, how dare you? Unforgivable sin," not to include Raffi. So I just made a little, like, 30-second PSA about how, like, in fact, obviously, Raffi was the first person I reached out to, and Raffi said no and didn't wanna be in the film, and so that's why Raffi's not in the film. Like, there's also we've been talking a lot about, like, directorial choices and power, but there's also just, like, making films in real life, which is why my newsletter is, like, I try to talk about, like, making films in real life. It's, like, not this academic exercise. Like, you don't have total power. People say no. You don't get access. Sometimes you shoot a great scene and the microphone didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that happen in real life that are
Yeah.
beyond your control.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you're trying to be mindful with all your choices, but there's also just, like, reality, what happens in the real world. Like, you don't get everything you want. And at some point, you just got to, like, finish the movie, you know? You can only do your best. That's all anyone can ask of you is to do your best. Um, but yeah, so I forget how I got on that topic, but yeah.
No, I just I'm always really interested in transparency, right? I think there's a difference between being factual and being transparent because
Mhm.
facts can be cherry picked, right? Like you can have a quote unquote true story that maybe doesn't actually feel true. Um
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
but this idea of transparency, which is like a great segue into your Substack, it feels like a something that you're really doing with it and something that um obviously is really resonating because your Substack is very popular. But just to sort of take a step back, before we dig into the Substack of it all, having a sustainable career in documentary has always been a lofty goal. Like,
Mhm.
when I started as an intern, um, in the mid 2000s in New York,
Mhm.
there were very few people that like worked in the industry, right? It was like a few
Mhm.
directors, a few editors, a few producers, but I did have this sense at that young age that if I kept working hard, I could have a career. And now I feel like the conversation around documentary filmmaking is the bubbles popped. It's just impossible. The facts are many people are leaving the industry because they can no longer find sustainable work. I feel like I've watched your journey just through like your social media posts over many years with having a sustainable career. But just to talk a little bit about, because I know you have your own production company. You were once a tenured professor. I think it would just be really interesting to hear a little bit about your story of building a sustainable career as we
Mhm.
then segue into the Substack of it all.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that, like, I mean, I only entered the industry around, like, 2012 or something,
Mhm.
2011, so, like, I came of age, like, I kind of entered the field at the beginning of what now we know was a boom. So I had this kind of like, "Oh, it just gets better every year," like, kind of experience where I was like, "Oh, my salary is higher this year than it was last year, like, isn't that not,"
Yeah.
And I think I, like, navigated it all pretty well, and I love the work I made and have been making in this moment, but yeah, it's definitely, like, changed a lot as, anyone listening already knows. My feeling is that it's probably just returned to what it was before the boom. That's my guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously the world changes, so I don't, I'm not saying like everything about it is identical, but probably if you were a documentary filmmaker in 1988, you probably weren't that likely to make a full-time, lifelong career out of it. Like, I think that was always true. I mean, I remember, again, when I was starting out, realizing that, like, Errol Morris did not make a living on documentary directing. Like, it
That
was a very important
Yeah,
piece of information for
yeah,
me to gain as a young filmmaker,
and still doesn't, by the
and
way.
still doesn't. And kind of like no one did as far as I know. So the fact that the anomaly is the recent past, like as far as I know, again, not an expert, like not from my own lived experience, but from just what I've observed or what I've gleaned, the anomaly was this last period of time where a lot of tech money came in and it seemed that things were changing and audience for documentary was growing. I don't know that it was ever growing. I think there was just a lot of tech money that was just like pouring in from like every direction, and everyone had to enter the streaming wars, and all those streaming sites needed content, and therefore there was a lot of money being directed towards me and you and people who made documentaries, which was great. And so as far as sustainability goes, I mean, I would never again, as I said earlier, in a million years, I do not think that I am owed a living as an artist. Like, I don't think anyone is owed a living as an artist. Like, you can like call me an unrepentant capitalist if you want, but like, I just don't think that's real. Like, real. It just feels very entitled. Like, oh, you think you deserve to like be a director for a living? Like, the world owes you a living. Like, okay, like, just I've never had that feeling. I've always felt like it was a tremendous privilege. That my feeling was that as soon as I quit my teaching job and I started doing this full time, I was like, I'm essentially in the NBA now. Like, the number of people who like make
Wait,
a
wait, wait. Can you talk about why you quit your
teaching
full-time
job.
job?
Yeah, because I was getting incredible opportunities to direct films at like, real with real budgets where I could pay myself and pay my
And what
people.
year was that?
2019.
Mhm. Yeah. No,
So
it's just really interesting to
yeah,
signpost.
yeah. So in
Yeah.
2019, I was like, at Sundance with Hail Satan, and like a lot of people were like, "Oh, we want to hire you." Like, I was getting like job opportunities
Mhm.
in a way that I'd never imagined I would. And I wanted to be able to say yes to those job opportunities. I wanted to be able to like play in a bigger sandbox. I wanted to be able to professionalize. I wanted to figure out what life would be like if I was just making films for a living, which I've been doing now for 6 years, almost 7 years. Um, but I was gonna say, so when I started out making films, like, and I always tell everyone that, like, of course you need another job. like, like the idea that someone's gonna pay you to make your first documentary is already like so insane. Like, it happened to some people during the boom times, and that's amazing. And I helped to executive produce some of those projects, and I think you probably did too. And that's amazing. But like, boy, that was the anomaly.
Yeah.
Like, why should someone give you money for your movie? Should be like your first question, like, like, so so I had a teaching job, and I was able to explore my identity as an artist. As I mentioned earlier, I went to art school. I didn't go to film school. So I was doing like experimental shorts. That was kind of what I was doing. And I was kind of gradually making my way into like doing what we would call documentary, or like indie film. And I had the luxury of having a real day job that paid all my bills, that also, because of the nature of academia, required me to make good on my art as well, right? Like, I had to like, sort of maintain my research portfolio, as they call it in academia. So I was making films, but I didn't really have to subject them to any market forces at all. Like, it was sort of like in academia, it's like if your films are successful, they look down on you. Like, you're supposed to be like, no one likes your stuff. Like,
Yeah, it's
you're
like
supposed
the
to be
world of
like,
punk rock.
yeah, it's like, oh, 4 people love your film. It must be great. But 4 million, I mean, oh God, the people have spoken. You must be crap. So in academia, it was very different. I didn't have to make money with my art. I just had to like make art and like find like reasonable placement in like film festivals, basically. And that would have been enough to get tenure. So I started like dipping my toes in like what we would call the film world, with my first feature, Our Nixon. And I like went to like Independent Film Week, which is now called Gotham Week, and stuff like that, where I was like pitching and like meeting people in the industry. And I met Dan Kogan, who just like really loved the project and like really loved me, and like came on as an EP, and probably he probably changed my life more than any one person, frankly, because he was like, this movie could be in Sundance. It wasn't, but it could have been. And the idea of that just had never crossed my mind. Like, I wasn't running that race. I was kind of doing my weird art
Mhm.
um on the weekends, as I was a college professor. So that was kind of the first 5, 6 years of my career. And in 2019, that was when I left academia to just start this production company with my business partner, Gabriel, and like see if we could build a business that was centered on making documentaries.
So in terms of your production company, just explain how that works a little bit for people that don't know. Like, how does a documentary production company work? How do you make money?
Mhm.
Projects?
So me and Gabriel started together, and the company was just a name. I mean, there was no like office or anything. But eventually we basically the entire business model has been, it's not sustainable at all. It was just like get enough projects, and have enough projects on an ongoing basis to be able to pay the office rent. And we hired two people full time to be on our staff. They're both producers. So I'm surrounded by producers all day, which is like both heaven and hell of my own making. Um, and
No, Penny, that's never gonna work.
there's
Next
a lot of
idea.
like, skeptical, but how are we going to fund that? You
The
figure it out.
market's just not there for that
Yeah,
right.
the market, exactly. So, but I'm also just very well supported. So basically the entire company, and we've also provided production services for other films, and we've
Mhm,
executive produced other films. So because we have an infrastructure here, and we have like a server, and we have edit rooms, and we have staff producers that can like pitch in other projects.
mhm,
So that's kind of what we've been doing. And like the business model as it was we need two projects funded a year, pretty much.
mhm,
And that was not a problem. We had two more than two projects funded a year all the way up until last year. So we're just sort of still in a place of like, okay, like what's the shift that we need to make? Like, can we afford the overhead of the office? Do we need to go
mhm.
back to working from home? Like, it's a little bit of a kind of depressing topic, frankly, but in the spirit of honesty, that's where we're
Yeah,
at. And like we have like we have no projects right now funded actually. We have like
really?
probably one, but not yet. Like,
And yeah.
and like, people still, as you probably are aware, I'm still doing all the same meetings. This is why
Yeah.
that's why it takes a long time to, like, catch on to reality being different because, like, I'm still doing all these meetings. I'm still, like, going to meetings, taking pitches, giving pitches, like, the execs are still receiving pitches. They're like, "Yes, I will receive your pitch." Like, everyone's, like, acting like nothing has changed, except then once a week you get an email from someone who's no longer employed at that company. Like, and you're like, "Got it." But listen, like, I just think we're in the middle of a huge shift. It cannot be overstated. Like, again, I'm such an optimistic person. Like, you're not going to get me to say, like, oh, wow, everything's terrible now. It was so great before. Like, no, yeah, we had a lot of like funny money get dumped into our field by tech people, like a lot of funny money, like hundreds and millions and probably billions of dollars just like coming in. Like, oh, CNN Plus needs stuff. Like every platform under the sun needs stuff, right? I had to turn down so many jobs like over the last, 6 years. And now I'm like, is anyone gonna like yeah. But I just think it's just gonna have to reset to like whatever the next thing is. And that's why like I am, sort of all in on learning about marketing, about learning about audience development. Like I've always done that, frankly, like more than most, I think, doc directors. I've been like kind of trying like active on social media, like sort of like, big on like talking to people and like, I don't know, yeah, building my fan base or building my audience. And I think my films are very, very heterogeneous. Like, so it's not like I'm a genre filmmaker or like, you probably know Gary Hustwit. I'm going to talk to
Mhm.
him soon. He's like, in a sort of lane, like he does design
Yeah.
document, not always, but like largely he's done like sort of a lot of films in the same kind of lane of like subject matter. I've never done that. I'm not in a defined genre. I'm not in a defined subject matter. So it's even more important for me that I like build my own audience and like maintain a relationship with them because as these like cycles of whatever the industry is or is not doing with me or to support me, like
Mhm.
I have to be able to say like, okay, but there are people out there who like want my films, like they want to see them. And how am I going to reach them? And like that is the new world order that we're in. We're in the user world. We're not in the push broadcast push world anymore. It's over. Like it's not happening again. Like so what is the mechanism by which we like find sustainable in the future? Like that's the question that I know you're asking and I am too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Penny. I think, um, what you were saying about you're still having all the meetings, but the business isn't there. I'm laughing because literally, like, today I have, like, back-to-back meetings. I have, like, all these things I'm working on, but the money is,
There's
like,
just no money. Yeah.
there. And so I was like and I this weekend, I went away for the weekend with another family, and the mom also works in doc, and I was telling her, I was like, "I feel so ridiculous because I'm stressed out about work, but I'm not
But I
making
don't have any work.
money."
Yeah.
I was like, I should just stop this and just spend more time with my kids and like,
I
you
mean,
know,
it's always been the case that producers and directors spend an inordinate amount of time doing unpaid labor trying to develop products, right? It's always been true. The difference is that there's usually at least like some number of them that go
something
to
at
the
the end
next
of the tunnel.
stage.
But the fact that we're here on Facebook, I'm sorry, not on Facebook,
Facebook.
Substack means that I feel like we both agree on something fundamental, which is the future of having a career in documentary is not to pitch things to streamers or wait for a call from Sundance,
Mhm.
but is to take matters into our own hands. And we can see in other industries, like for example in music,
Yeah.
done this already. Obviously, all the famous big creators on YouTube have done this. But it's really about for both of us and anyone who wants to work in this, I would agree. I think we would agree that it's about having that direct relationship with your audience and building up your own fan base to support the work that you want to do because there's no one at the other end of the line on these calls and on these pitches anymore.
Yeah.
So how I was really interested when I was reading about like why you started your Substack,
Mhm.
when you were just for people that don't know, you'd submitted a film to Sundance, you didn't get in
Again,
and you know
I never get into Sundance.
um but I think we're both coming from this similar place, and I'm sure many other people are as well, of feeling rejection and dejection about the state of the industry, but not wanting to stop doing it. So talk to me about your Substack, and I just want to highlight your recent piece, the Penny Lane Hype House piece, because that's exactly what everything you wrote there. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And so talk to me about how excited you are to join the creator economy and why it's not depressing and why it's not anti-art. And
Mhm.
I think that's like the hopeful discussion I think everyone is really excited to have who
Yeah.
doing this.
I mean, first of all, look, if I hadn't been like on this like, little like I don't even know what to call it, but like, you know, funding train, I guess. If I hadn't been like riding the wave of this, money that was like poured into my field and suddenly accessible to me for the last, whatever, 5 or 6 years or whatever number you want to give it, I would have been really focusing on this all along. Like, and I should have been actually, in addition to like, when I look back, I'm like, "Oh, God, when I did Hail Satan, that movie was a huge hit. And like, I didn't get any of those email addresses. You know what I mean? Like,
Ah,
like Magnolia got all those email addresses, or if anyone did.
yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, oh, I really like let it kind of slide for a while because the smartest thing I ever did in my entire career was crowdfunding. That's the smartest thing I ever did in my entire career. And it's not because of the total dollar amounts. It wasn't because of the total dollar amounts. It doesn't even compare to like some of the sales that I've made to streamers or whatever. But those people who were my fans who like supported my work at the crowdfunding stage back in like 2011, 2012, 2014, 2016, 20 that era are still on my email list. And in fact, when I started my Substack, all of my founding members were people who I was like, how do I know that email? Oh, they're like a supporter on Nuts from 10 years ago.
I love
Like,
that.
what does that tell you? And like, what did I miss out on by like kind of not crowdfunding for those years that I was instead getting my paychecks from HBO and like having, and like letting the PR departments like run the campaign and do their paint by numbers. Like, no offense to anybody, like they're all amazing. I've nothing bad to say
Yeah.
about HBO or Magnolia, nothing at all. They're all great.
Yeah.
But like, I could have been and should have been. Look, Elias Savada said I was a crowdfunder fan since Our Nixon. Exactly. And like, and he's here right now. Like, so, and it tells you something when you give
Yeah.
it's not, again, it's not about the dollars. When you give people a chance to feel like they're part of something cool, like maybe they want to come along for the ride. And like, I look back at those campaigns and I'm really proud of them. And it really was content creation. It was about making a really excellent video. It was about writing really cool pitch material for them. And it was about posting cool updates weekly about the making of the film. Like I look back on those campaigns and I feel proud.
Yeah.
What is this
Yeah.
saying here? What has stopped that funding from flowing in? Well, thank you for saying my talent's still there. As I was saying before, in brief, I think, and this is my I'm not an industry expert. I can only speak from like my what I think is happening. There was just a massive amount of tech money that came into documentary during the streaming boom because there was a streaming wars happening. It was like, okay, well, everyone's going to try to compete with Netflix. So, like, Amazon needs stuff and they need stuff. And the year that I went to Sundance with Nuts, I was looking back on it and it was like literally the headlines were like, Amazon buying spree, Netflix buying spree.
Oh,
And it's like,
yeah.
you're not getting those headlines today. And it's just a very different like the money that flowed in from tech just kind of went away. Like Netflix won the streaming wars, the end. Like, like we'll see what happens next. But that's kind of like in brief to answer your question. Like I think what happened. Um,
I just posted your Hype House Substack
oh
in the
yeah.
chat, so
So yeah,
everyone
being
can
a
really go
content
read.
creator.
So, okay, I'm gonna ask you some pushback questions on all this because there are two sides, but one thing that I mean, of course, I'm on the same side as you, Penny,
Mhm.
but obviously there's a lot of also complaints, which we'll get to in a second, but let's keep being positive. Um, there's one version of creating all this ancillary content or DVD extras
Mhm.
or creating yourself as a social media presence on Instagram or that it's a lot of work, right? It's a slog. It doesn't happen. You don't do a post in 5 minutes, right? Like I can even like a note on Substack sometimes takes me an hour because I write and rewrite and what about this and what about that and what photo. But I loved how you're taking a class right now.
Mhm.
And so you put this great graphic about the beliefs of being a content creator. And number 5, which you said was your favorite, is creating content is empowering because it means you can stop waiting to be chosen.
Mhm.
So in this new model, talk to me about the role of gatekeepers because I also love how you walk the line between like criticizing the sort of documentary awards industrial complex, i.e., Sundance, Prestige, all of that, yet still not dismissing it because obviously
Yeah.
it has value. Like, how do you
Huge
kind
amount of
of
value.
balance being like, just I'm doing my hype house, I'm gonna create, but like also still being an artist and being part of those more, let's call them, the Ivy League.
I don't
Uh,
know. I don't feel like I am part of the Ivy League, honestly, Kathleen. I think I was left out.
What?
I've been left out for quite some time. But it's okay. I started my career in that prestige lane, and I think it really helped me a lot. I think it helped to like get my
Yeah.
name out there in a particular way before I had, any other fans. Like I think it really mattered to like be in Sundance and be nominated for awards and win awards and be on those kind of year-end lists and all that stuff. But that's not been, if you look, that's not been my life for like a number of years now. So I'm already like sort of making choices based on like what the market is telling me in a sense. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like I ain't got no Emmys. Like no one's handing me any statues. So I'm like, okay, so even though I think of myself as this like artiste or whatever, it's
Mhm.
very clear that like the marketplace does not see me that way. And I think it's very important over time to like accept and understand like the lane that you're in. Sorry about the pun, but like you have to know your lane. And like if I was still like banging my head against like Sundance Awards lane, like, yeah, I'd just be sitting at home crying right now because like
Yeah.
I'm not in it. Like it's not working.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am in a lane where the films I make, people actually want to see. They're not like slogs. And again, I love all documentaries. It's not, I love the hard ones. I love the challenging ones. I love the ones that are super hard to watch and about very important subjects. Like all that is like, it's not a dismissal. It's just like seeing what the market is telling me is that like I make films that are a little more like popular, kind of like accessible. Like, I don't know what language you want to use. I should probably find a better way to say this, but like, if you're like depressed about the world, like maybe you want to watch a comedy. And I don't make comedies. I make documentaries that have a lot of humor. There's a big difference. Comedies all have happy endings. Just to remind everyone of genre rules. Most of my films do not have happy endings. But I just think like I'm trying to like understand like who I am, what I bring to bear, what I have to offer, and like lean into that. Because if I was sitting at home like waiting for an Emmy or whatever, and trust me, I've tried to get Emmys, I've tried to get awards. I've put myself in those arenas. I'm just not going to spend time on that anymore. Like it's very clear. The feedback is very clear. Like if you make a movie that is like widely beloved but has jokes in it, you're not like winning any awards, like get over yourself. Like it's
Yeah.
okay, so anyway, so that's kind of beside the point though. Like my excitement about being a content creator is that I've always been a content creator, as I was saying earlier. Like all of my Kickstarter campaigns were like incredibly executed content campaigns. Like it was about like making content that people wanted to read, wanted to share, because that's a big part of it, is what you want to share with your friends. Like what are reasons people want to share this live conversation, or a post that you write, or a note that you leave, or a gif, or a podcast. Like what are reasons people are going to want to share that with people? And I feel like that's kind of like part of how you build your community. I saw David Ferrier just logged on. David Ferrier has been doing this forever. He's like a role model in this because he has been creating podcast content, written blog content, journalism, and all filtered through his unique point of view. And when it comes time for him to drop a new movie, if that's what he chooses to do, his fans are going to want to watch that movie. Like he's like exactly who I'm talking about right now. Like that is a very smart way to organize your career.
Yeah.
So
I
if
mean,
you can do it, if you're comfortable, and this is what I've learned being in my content creation class, most people are not comfortable doing this. Like they're not chaotic environment. Yes. Like most people aren't comfortable getting on a live on the internet. Like this is like already like advanced content creation for most people. Most people are terrified to even like write a Facebook post and subject them. Like I made one of my homework assignments where I had to like make an inside joke on my feed, and I was like, well, I'm always doing that anyway, so it was easy homework. But I posted this inside joke, and someone got mad at me. Like there was one person who like misinterpreted the intention of my joke, and they were very mad at me, and they left a mean comment. And I was like, this would shut down like 99% of people. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, well, 100 people liked it. One guy hated it. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, that's okay. Like making a joke is automatically means not everyone's going to get it and not everyone's going to like it. And it's the same with all content. Like your
yeah.
content is not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to like circle something that you said about making things that a lot of people want to watch that's entertaining and
Yeah.
the sort of awards Sundance lane. Because, I talk to a lot of short filmmakers, and there's a huge amount of them that are spending eye-watering amounts of money on Oscar campaigns for their short
Oh
films.
yeah. Mhm.
And I think it's I think it's really easy to look at the sort of Oscars Sundance route and pay attention to that. These are so much press around it. And that's what all the like documentary podcasts are covering. But then if you like stick your head up
Like 10 people.
down,
All the documentary podcast. I mean, it's like there's like 10 people, guys. Like it's
well,
be real.
this is what I'm saying. I think a lot of times for up and coming filmmakers, they're the ones that pay attention to that stuff. And so they feel like in order to be successful, that's where they're sort of trying to orient as their goals. And I think what you're saying, which is that you've sort of pivoted towards making films that people want to watch that are entertaining and making choices alongside that. I also think if you look at the numbers of like what documentaries do well at the box office. I mean, let's leaving aside the right-wing ones because Am I Racist was the biggest doc in theaters last year, and the Melania Trump doc had the biggest opening weekend for a doc in like I can't remember, like 20 years or something. So those things aside, I feel like there's a whole world out there of popular documentaries
Yeah.
that make money at the box office, that
Or
have
on
millions of
YouTube.
views on
Or on the
YouTube
charts.
that we're not talking enough about.
No, and that's like a huge interest area for me, and
Yeah.
part of why, like, so I'll just tell people now, like, I watched this documentary, Corey Feldman versus the World, and this is a movie that played 0 film festivals. It had no support from, as far as I can tell, anyone in the documentary community. Like I looked at the credits. The credits are so short, and when you're in this industry, you can like read the credits and like get a lot of information out of them.
I
The credits
know.
are so short, and it's the most incredible film. And it's a number one on, the Apple charts for the last, I think, 8 or 9 weeks. It's been like selling. I hope she's making all the money because it's a fantastic movie. It's not just like, oh, it's a celebrity. That's why it's like very well made, excellent film. And I got in touch with her, and I'm going to be doing a Substack live with her in a couple weeks because
Oh,
I'm
great.
very interested in these other lanes. There was a documentary that dropped on YouTube last year called Listers, which I finally
Mhm.
saw, and it's
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. And
Yeah.
again, like to me, it's not like it's easy. I'm already in this kind of like you're kind of making fun of me for saying I'm not in the prestige lane because I kind of
I think of you that
look,
way,
at least
but maybe I'm wrong.
no,
I
maybe
don't know.
at least historically I was, and I think
Yeah.
that credibility takes a long time to wear off. So, like, so like the award that I got at Sundance literally 10 years ago, I guess, is still kind of like powering the sense that I have that world. But like, so it's not, and I want to be very clear, like nothing about what I'm saying is, oh, I'm trying to make dumb movies for popular
No,
audiences. I'm
you're
making the exact same movies. I'm still the exact same artist.
yeah.
It's just that for a few years, there was a lot of funny money just pouring in. I mean, I had people offering me millions of dollars to just chase down whatever like strange artistic desire I had.
Yeah.
Like, that's the weird part. Okay.
Yeah.
But, like, I've always been chasing down whatever weird artistic desire I had. I just got paid a lot of money for some reason, major corporations for a while for that. Like, that's what's over. Now it's like, I'm not sure what the major corporations wanna pay for. That's a conversation for another day. But in the meantime, I'm just sort of thinking, like, I think you were asking me to talk about with my Penny Lane Hype House article is the idea that it seems like if you wanna make content to draw people to your films, that it's like this crass commercial exercise that, like, it's, like, so gross. Like,
Yeah.
you're prostituting yourself and you're, like, making, like, slaving away to make first of all, like, the labor of making content is undervalued in our culture because it is largely performed by young women, and it is a lot of work. But second of all, like, this is the long game. Like, my long game is I need my 10,000 fans. Like, if I don't have that, I have, like, nothing in this world at this point. Like, I don't have, like, the money pouring in from the megacorps anymore. I have to go back to my roots. My first documentary I ever made was called The Abortion Diaries. It was a half an hour short documentary, and I distributed it by getting in my car and driving around the United States with DVDs in the trunk. I booked screenings at universities, at bars, at libraries. I sold DVDs for $10 each. I ended up selling, I think, 8,000 of those DVDs at that point in my life. Like, over the course of the 2 or 3 years that I was doing those tours, I kept re-upping these DVDs. And I'm like, "That's where I started." So, like, and also I wanna say, I'm not a rich person, and I don't have, like, generational wealth propping me up. Like, I actually have to make money. Like, if I wanna continue to do this, I have to make money. It's not a hobby. I can't ride the prestige train because the prestige train does not pay your bills, like, at all. Like, you don't win many money for getting an Oscar.
Yeah.
Like,
Everyone by the way, everyone, you also don't get paid when you're campaigning
no, you
for
spent
awards. You pay your own way to Sundance,
me
everybody.
not getting into Sundance this year means we saved approximately $20,000 in,
Mhm.
like, bank money coming out of our accounts, to go to Sundance. Like, so again, I wanna be in Sundance just as much as everyone. I cried for days when I didn't get in.
Yeah.
But, I do have to admit that, like, this movie that didn't get into Sundance, we are planning, like, a very robust and exciting theatrical release for, and, like, it's gonna be a lot more valuable in the long run to get people to show up and buy tickets for money that might have a chance of one day reaching my bank account, which is also not something that happens at Sundance or at the Oscars. Everyone wants everything, but you can't have everything. You know what I mean? You just
Yeah.
can't have everything. And for
I
me,
mean,
it's like, if I had all the money in the world, I can tell you right now, if I was handed millions and millions of dollars, I would spend the rest of my life making difficult art films. And I promise you that they would be great. The worst thing in the world are the rich people who still make boring films. That's my hot take for the day.
okay, I'm definitely gonna post that as a clip to promote this.
Like, you gotta be
Oh,
kidding me. If you don't even need to make money on this stuff, like, you should be taking the biggest swings because, like, I feel that I could be, like, the greatest auteur if I just had unlimited funds. I'm so sorry, but, like, I live in
oh,
the real world, and I have to
yeah.
negotiate, like, real world things and, like, figure out how to not only pay my own rent, but I also really care about my team. And there's people sitting right outside my office right now whose, like, livelihoods right now I am responsible for. And, like, that's the big challenge right now. I'll be fine because, like, I'll figure out a way to make money. I do consulting. I can go back to teaching probably if I want to. Like, I have a lot of sort of side hustles that I think can add up to a significant part of my income. That's certainly part of what I'm trying to accomplish with the Substack. Um, but not everyone around me can, and I wanna keep them. Like, I wanna be able to keep paying these salaries. There's nothing more dignifying than being able to, out of the creative energy of my own brain, create employment opportunities for other people. There's nothing in my life that feels more satisfying to me than that, and I include making films in that. Like, I feel the tremendous honor and dignity of that every day, and I will mourn it if I have to let that go
Mhm.
because I've really loved it. I've really loved being a boss. I've loved having a company. I've loved having a staff. I've loved having a team. And if I can't continue to support that infrastructure, I'll be super sad. Like that to me is the real big loss. I'll keep making films no matter what. But I love being able to create real, well paid opportunities for other people in this field. Like that to me has been like the most meaningful part of all this.
Okay, well, here's a tough reality. So, as people who follow my Substack know, I've talked to a lot of film teams about all these same issues. And basically, what you're talking about doing is self-distributing your film, or if you're in Ted Hope's version of it, the non-D, which
Mhm.
basically means non-dependent, doing everything ourselves, which I totally subscribe to, and I think that's the future. We just have to take the means of production and distribution into our hands. But at the same time, right now, when you dig into the dollars and cents, I haven't talked to anybody who's doing it who says, "Oh, yeah, I'm making great money." They're like,
Totally.
"Yeah, I made, a few $100,000, but I had a few $100,000 in costs,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
really complicated with my waterfall because I was supposed to pay back the investors, so I had to go
Mhm.
back and negotiate with them."
Mhm.
By the way, the first people to get paid in documentaries are lawyers, and the second people are editors. Um, but, like,
Well, no, first lawyers, then insurance companies,
okay,
then editors.
true, very true. But all that to say, like, the dollars and cents, like,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk to you, and,
Oh, I
like,
have a lot of question marks about it.
I, like, are you like, this is what we all need to be here talking
Yeah.
about, showing, discussing,
Mhm.
sharing in real time, like, this is such an exciting moment where everyone's sort of reinventing the wheel in their own ways to fit their own careers, their own goals. Not everyone, some people are, you definitely are, I'm also trying to. Um But we don't yet have, like, true success stories, at least not that I really know of, so I'm very curious to continue this conversation in terms of, like, there's all this excitement around, we're gonna do our Substacks, we're gonna
Yeah.
release movies our way, but ultimately, I think it's still a question mark about what does that mean for budget, which is gonna
Totally.
redounds
Well,
back.
that's kind of and the important thing is that, and this is part of, like, my, sort of feeling is, like, I'm on Substack, and I'm reading all these excited posts about, like, low budgets, and when I hear low budgets, I hear I can't pay people what they're worth, and
I
that
hate when
sucks.
people say things are low budget. Oh my god, that pisses me off so much,
I mean,
Penny.
again, I wanna be clear, like, I started my career making low budget films, and the
Yeah.
people that worked on me with those films did it for the love of the game, and I don't think I exploited them, so it's not
Yeah.
about that. It's about, like, again, it's about my own sense of dignity that I am able to pay people what they are worth, and I feel good about that, and when I hire somebody and I think about the fact that some of that money is going to their college fund, I just feel proud. So I feel like I want to be able to keep doing that, and that's what I'm worried about in like the yay, let's go low budgets. Right now we're trying to figure out how to make our budgets lower, but it also just means like having to call every one of our collaborators and talk realistically about what it looks like in 2026 for them, because I gotta tell you, we're not able to pay most of the people we're writing into these budgets what we were able to pay them 2 years ago. And having to have that conversation with people and be very honest and like sort of talk about like what that looks like and whether they still want to be part of these projects is very important. I will say that it's very heartening that my collaborators still want to work with me, even though I can't pay them what I paid them 2 years ago. But that's sort of a whole other, thing. I just want to be clear, like for me, being a content creator is not about like I do think someone mentioned in the comments this idea of direct to audience. Like all of that is important, but for me, it's more about finding the penny lane people who like would be interested in the next thing I make, even though the next thing I make will have nothing to do with the last thing I made. And that is what you were asking me to talk about earlier, where it sounds so like crass and commercial to be like, I'm making content to get followers so that I can, it's like the opposite of that. If I was making crass commercial work, I wouldn't need to develop an audience for it. The audience would already exist. If I were doing standard genre fare, if I were like a hardworking true crime director, just like churning it out, which is like, not what I do. I don't need to go on Instagram and find fans. Like that's going to slot in. Like, that's going to slot in to the pre-existing audience that already exists. There's no pre-existing audience for what I do. I make auteur-driven work. I have to Cyrus. I thank you, Cyrus. He's here. I have to like find Cyrus. Like I have to like, find Elias. Like I have to do the work and put myself out there. And the way that the industry wants you to act is that everything you're doing is a big secret and you can't tell anyone what you're working on. And then no one can know about it until one day there's a press release about how it came out at Sundance, or one day there's a press release about how it came out at HBO. And then that's it. There's no audience development at all. These film institutions are not doing a good job of developing audiences for the kinds of films that I want to make. So I have to do that. And these institutions can be very good at amplifying like a spark that like the film team creates. They are really good at amplifying that. And Secret Mall Apartment was a great example of that, because Secret Mall Apartment spent 2 years developing that audience. They did a year of festivals. They did an incredible theatrical. They did credible like audience development the whole time. And then it lands on Netflix. It goes straight to the top 10, stays there for 2 weeks. That was not Netflix creating the audience. That was Netflix amplifying the work that had already been done. And I think that's the world we're in now. Like you can get maybe that amplification from Netflix, but like my movie went on Netflix 2 years ago. Trust me, no one saw it. I can't even find it. Like if I go on Netflix and I'm trying to click through the screens and I'm like, maybe it's under this category or maybe it's under that category. Like it's literally not there as far as I can tell, because it landed there with no pre-existing audience development done. And that is a mistake. Like, that's just not the way it works anymore. Like, Netflix hasn't figured out, HBO hasn't figured, none of them have figured out how to like create, like 50% of people who watch a documentary are going to learn about it on social media. 50%. They're not going to learn about it because you were in Sundance. Like, we have to get past this way of thinking, this like tiny little circle of people who care about what movies at Sundance. Like, yes, I care too, because I also desire accolades and I desire what I feel is like the respect of my peers, and I desire to be in the golden little circle with the golden ring winners. Like, I'm a very competitive person. I like to win too. However, like that cannot be the sum total of your dreams, because almost no one's going to get it, first of all. And even if you do, the movie doesn't go anywhere after that. Like it's not good, like in the long run, So,
Yeah.
so I think I've been a content creator all along, and I'm just trying to like own it more. And like I was having dinner with a friend who's like firmly in like the golden ring world, because most of my friends are. That's why one of the reasons it's embarrassing for me is I'm just like tripping over their Emmys like on the way to the kitchen, and I'm like, okay, like I'm surrounding people that really like are killing it in this like a prestige game. And I started talking to her about my content creation class and how I was like doing all this stuff. And she just looked like so horrified and like so embarrassed for me. Like I was like, yeah, like pimping myself or something. And I was just like, I don't find it embarrassing. If you find it embarrassing, don't do it, obviously. But I don't find it embarrassing at all. I think it's incredibly rewarding to put yourself out there and to like let people come to you if they're interested. And a lot of people don't like you. That's fine. I was looking at my analytics the other day on Instagram, because I've been like really looking at it for the first time, like really understanding like who I have in my followers and whatever the numbers. I would never even looked at the numbers before. And I tell you, like over the last 90 days, I've gained 900 followers and I've lost 200.
Mhm.
Like 200 people were like, ugh, like I hate this. You know what I mean? And like I
Yeah.
focus on those 200
Do.
people because I have
I do.
the other 700 people that are like really into it. Like and that's what's so great too. Other thing I would say is that like I'm not sitting at home like obsessing over the audience and trying to give them exactly what they want. But getting like even just being on Substack and being on Instagram and having access to the analytics and having access to seeing what people like and what they don't like is such a difference than like what I've been experiencing, which is I make a movie and I kill myself over for 2 years. And if I'm lucky, it plays some film festivals. And if I'm not lucky, it doesn't. And either way, it ends up on a streamer. And I have absolutely no idea if anyone's watching it, like whatsoever. And there's no feedback. And I don't know if it's popular. I don't know anything about like what's happening out there. Which is why I'm actually a big proponent of reading your letterbox reviews. Everyone's like, don't read your reviews. Wrong. Read the
Oh,
reviews. Read
I
the letterbox
enjoy
reviews.
yeah.
You can ignore the critics, but you can't ignore the letterbox reviews because that's where like people are actually talking about your film. Like that's the world we live in, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I mean, obviously, I'm not a director, I'm a producer, but for me, starting the Substack, I feel like it's another creative outlet. Making films takes so long, and it's really, I think, cool to be
It
able to
is fun.
write about. Just write about this stuff, guys. But it still takes a lot of
Fun.
work. I think about it. I look at the data. I read other things. It's still a creative endeavor. I'm still telling a story and thinking about audience and truth and what's important. Um, but it's way more immediate than making a film. So I actually still feel it's very much feels very tied to doing what we do, which is making documentary films. And now we're writing about it. It feels to me as like a really organic extension. And to your friend with all the Emmys that was shocked by it, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I bet I know who it is. Uh,
They might also
I
have like a little more money in the bank than me. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, I know those people too, and there's certain directors that I've worked with because, as everyone knows, I've worked with so many directors because of OpDoc. So I've also seen many flavors of documentary directors. They're
you
all
bet.
different. And there's some of them where I'm like, they will never do this. And like, that's also okay. But I think in this moment, putting down, I think the gatekeepers, the awards, the festivals, the truth is that stuff does not translate into earning money.
No.
So decide what you want to do. If you already have money and you're just going to stay in the Sundance Oscars lane, like great. If you're an up and coming filmmaker, my advice would be to focus less on that and focus more on how you do Penny in terms of thinking about audience and what are the films that are doing well and then going in that lane if you need to make money. And then if you really need to make money, hone your skills as a true crime director. Get into that. What are the celeb biopics? I mean, that stuff isn't bad. It's just everyone has to pick their lane. And then when you pick your lane, as you were talking about before, that doesn't mean you're entitled to make money, doesn't mean you're entitled to
No.
I go to all these things where they talk about like career sustainability for documentary filmmakers and young people are like, I really want to be a filmmaker, but like I just don't see how I can pay the bills. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's exactly correct.
That's true. There's no golden ticket. Just because you wanna make a documentary film does that not mean you will be able to make money doing it. Like, that's just not ep it's never been how it worked, and I think because of the golden years, I think that idea
It got out there, and
got out
it was
there.
the case. I mean, it was easier for a few years to do that as even as a first time director to get a $2 million budget for your doc was possible.
Yeah,
But it's pretty tough to get a $2 million doc funded for anyone right now.
and I also wanna tell everybody, I sold many projects for millions of dollars or was part of, and I saw it all happen through friends and everything like that. Just because a streamer buys your movie does not mean anyone will watch it or care about it. I I think everyone like people are like, "Oh, but my goal is to have Netflix buy my movie." But like what you were saying is now you can't find it. Just because Netflix buys your movie doesn't mean that people will see it. And one thing I learned doing op docs where honestly we didn't pay very much was I always say this and please everyone yell at me, but my impression is the only thing that filmmakers care about more than money is audience and knowing people are watching their work.
Yeah, I mean, compared to what? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, so going the audience really thinking about audience as your business plan instead of going to a streamer, I feel like is like a better point of view.
Yeah, I think it is. And again, I'm not some kind of expert on this. Like I saw Judy Finley just joined, and Judy's really good at audience development and content creation. I've been watching her do that for years, and like she's one of my role models in that way. In fact, Jeannie, you should know I looked at your Instagram page as I was trying to think about how to fix my own. And so I think that it's like, not something that I can claim to be an expert on. It is something I feel bullish about, and something that I feel beyond bullish about. It feels like the other thing is to say, like, as you mentioned earlier, like it's very empowering to be a content creator and to, like, get out there and just, like, do your own hustle. It's just empowering. I don't find that degrading, I find that empowering. What I find degrading is sitting at home crying, hoping a film festival programmer likes my movie. That's degrading. I find that very degrading, and I shouldn't. Like, I should be able to, like, not take it personally, what I mean?
No, no,
But,
no.
like, it's just really true that, like, it's much more empowering to get that message on Instagram from someone who's like, "I've never heard of you before, and now I'm following you, and I'm just, like, loving everything you're posting." Like, that is so empowering and gratifying. Do not ask me yet how that communicates to, like, dollars in my bank account, because that's not the goal right now for me. The goal right now for me is developing my audience, finding more penny lane people and asking them if they want to come along on this ride with me, and trying to create content that makes them want to do that. And this is what's so strange is that mentioned him in this class. You're supposed to go and, like, look at comps. All the filmmakers that I admire, their Instagram is just like a list of accomplishments. Like, so it's actually pretty hard to find models for myself, and I find that very interesting. I think it's so. Let me give you some examples. So, like, a lot of my friends are in the literature world. They're in the publishing world. And it's long been true, like for many, many, many years, that publishers look at whether you have a platform already coming into the publishing experience, because marketing books is very hard. And they have learned that an author like Austin Kleon, who just joined, who has their own fan base, is a good bet for publishing a book, right? The thing that I was trying to figure out is that why I don't feel like that's true in film. And in other words, like, I think if you worked in publishing, you'd hear about this all the time. I don't remember this ever coming up, Kathleen. Has it ever come up for you that, like, you were talking to buyers and buyers were interested in whether anyone in the film team had a following? My theory about that is that it's because we were in a star system, so it was about the actors. Where you do hear about it is in fiction filmmaking, and they want the actors to have a social media following. That's part of it, is that it's a star system where, like, it's not about the director, it's about the stars. And then I think in doc, the equivalent is obviously, like, is the subject a celebrity or
Yeah.
is the subject well-known IP that people are pre-existing fans of? Like, if you're making a documentary on a subject that's famous and has a platform, then that's come up, I think.
Yeah.
No, people don't usually talk about the social media following numbers, but they have a sense that, like, okay, David Bowie is famous or whatever. They have
Yeah.
a fan base. But I'm just like, why doesn't the film industry care about that?
Well,
Shouldn't
okay.
they?
Okay. So one thing that I feel is maybe people don't think about enough is how all the streaming companies, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Disney, their goal is to get more people to pay to subscribe to their service.
Mhm.
So each individual piece of content is only judged by how many people watched it and then subscribed, or who were a subscriber and
Yeah.
stuck with it. Individual films, like, don't really move the needle in the same way as, like, theatrical, where what moves the needle is, like, if someone buys the ticket, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea of the value of each individual film only matters at this incredibly big number of, like, 10 million people. If 10 million people will watch it for streaming, that's where things are now. And when you think about the type of work that you make and the type of work that I strive to make and have made in the past, is we're not going for 10 million views. We
No.
don't need that. We're not, our budgets aren't budgets that need 10 million people to buy a ticket for it. So it's about figuring out what is the market for the type of work that we like to make, and how can we monetize it appropriately, and figuring out what are those monetization streams. Is it putting on YouTube and having ads? Is it putting it on Kinema? Christy, the head of Kinema, was on in the beginning. I don't know if she's still on, but check out Kinema. That's like a different model for monetization. There's doing a theatrical and making money through selling tickets. There's having a Substack where people pay. There's merch. It's really a thinking about all these different ways to make money off of a project, not just directly selling it to one buyer, cashing the check and going home. And then the other thing I would say is to your point about followers, in that business model, followers are your fans. They're the ones that are going to pay because they care about it to see your movie. And I don't know if any of you read the Substack Feed Me, if anyone's familiar with it. It's written by this woman named Emily. I'm going to ruin her last name. Well, just look up Feed Me. It's written by Emily. And funnily enough, she was a documentary filmmaker. And I remember she had a documentary short on Gardiner's Island, which is like this cool secret island near New York City. But her Substack is insanely successful. And she recently gave a presentation at Stanford Business School. And she was really shocked that all the students in business school, MBAs, are being taught they need to make content about themselves and their journeys as they start
Smart.
businesses.
If only I could do that.
Yeah.
I could talk that.
And
Wait, can I just interrupt and say
yeah.
I'm being like pressured to do the opposite because like there is a feeling that like Penny's gone rogue and that like, you know, if Penny has a new movie out with HBO, she's going to be creating her own content about it. And I don't get the sense that anyone's happy about it, like on the business side.
Well, I mean, yeah, because for a big corporation, they're nervous about you.
They don't want Penny making her own
What
content.
I'm gonna say? I'm just putting the Feed Me in the chat because
But yeah, it's about being an entrepreneur. It's about being a startup. It's about
telling your
understanding.
story.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing is that, like, if we are not good at this, then who is? Like, I'm sorry. Like, are we not storytellers? Are we not visual storytellers? Like, surely we can figure out how to, like, you know, bring people along. And I just the only thing I would say is that, like, you know, I do think that the problem, if there is one, with like going on Substack and like, you know, trying to like build your audience there is that like your audience can't just be other film people. Like your audience is a lot bigger than that. And like so far, like for me, like my Substack audience is like mostly film people, you know? It's been a little bit of crossover. Like I did a live conversation with Austin, who's on here too, and a lot of his fans like I think enjoyed that and like kind of hopped over my. So there is some like audience development for sure, but I just want to be clear that like for me, I'm thinking a lot more about Instagram. I'm thinking a lot more about like other platforms that I believe like people who are interested in documentaries are on, and I'm also like thinking about like specific subject matter relating to each film. So I have now a catalog of films. I've come to understand that like most people don't know about them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's very memorable for me, but I made a movie called Our Nixon 12 years ago. And some people on this live know about it. A lot of people do not. And I've been thinking a lot about when I look at the documentary charts on like the downloads for the Apple documentary charts, I took a screenshot of it in one of my recent newsletters. And what you notice is that like 3 or 4 or 5 out of the top 20 were not new releases. They were movies that came out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And this is actually very inspiring and should tell us all something. We were told a long time ago about the idea of the long tail on the internet. And then we were told that was a myth. But I don't think it was. I think the long tail is very real. And you see it in the documentary charts. You can have a piece of an old film pop off on like various platforms like tomorrow if you're thinking smart about it. So no, you can't make the movie and then think there's an all right sale, take the check and go home, move on to the next film. You have to be thinking about how that film is going to be being made accessible to audiences a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Like what is the, you know, what like and then here's the only downside. I don't really own most of these movies. Like
That's what I was just wondering. Yeah.
so like I can go make content about why I think people should like watch Kenny G, and that's good I think for my profile and it's good for me finding my Penny Lane people, but it's not putting dollars in my bank account because that movie does not like I don't own the IP. I own the IP only of like the first only a few of my films, but that's another topic that we could talk about another day.
Well, we've gone way over.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Hour, so I think we should wrap up. We just got to.
I just want to say, like, yeah, I don't. This last comment from Shannon, I wonder if the algorithms are even working anymore for independent people. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you look at the iTunes chart right now, the number one documentary is called Corey Feldman versus the World. It was made by the most independent person, as far as I can tell. Like, it seems like it was not supported by any major companies, any major executives, no festivals, no like gatekeepers. So like that is working. Like I don't know what she did. Like we obviously are going to find out when I interview her on my Substack in a couple weeks. But like that's all I care about right now. It's why I'm going to get the people who made listers to talk to me. I want to understand that. I want to understand how 3 million people watched this funny bird watching documentary for free on YouTube. How did that happen? How did this Corey Feldman? I think it is working, Shannon. I just think that like what's not I don't there's a lot of things that aren't working. Don't get me wrong. But, most people who will watch a documentary this year will watch it on streaming and they'll learn about it from social media. And that's just like what we need to understand. Like whatever else we need to understand is ancillary to those two facts. And those are tens of millions of people. There's 57 million people that say they're fans of documentaries, and there's 57 million people that say they've watched a documentary on streaming in the last month. So like that's not nobody. Like, that's a lot of people. Like, that's a lot of people. So there's something going wrong in discovery for sure. Like, and that is the nut that we're all trying to crack. And the legacy institutions know less than we do, frankly, like at this point. And I mean that with all the love in my heart, but like, they don't know how to market movies in the user era in a way that is effective. If you want to make films, it really behooves you to learn how to market movies in the user era because, as you said earlier, Kathleen, we want our films to be seen, even if it doesn't result in dollars in the bank. We want our films to be seen. We want our films to have impact. We want our films to exist in the world. And I also, I just think, yeah, it's just on us. And nobody likes to hear it. Sorry. But like that's just the truth. It's just on us. It always kind of was with this like brief blip of, again, tech money just like bathing everything in confusion. And I frankly am just think we're just returning normal. We're returning back to what it was before.
Yeah, and to me, the 2 things that give me hope are the size of the audience for documentaries. The Shorenstein Center at Harvard did a report.
That's what I'm quoting.
Yeah, exactly, and it was like the potential audience is like 70 million Americans, but think about it, our audience isn't just Americans, it's global,
Global.
and then also
Absolutely.
that's an audience for documentary. Each subject has
Its
audience.
own.
Kenny
Exactly.
G, huge number of fans.
Hmm.
People get organ transplants. Each film has its own.
Slightly smaller. Slightly
Well,
smaller group. But
but it's still I mean, it's still a group of
I mean,
people
but
that
listen to me, like the Kenny G
really
film,
want to.
given how many fans Kenny G has, like which is like an insane number,
Yeah,
that movie should have been number one on HBO for weeks. It was not. Like I'm just like,
exactly, because they didn't
how did
promote
they
your
hear about
movie.
it? Like
They don't promote your movie. They promote people to subscribe to the service, and people who are gonna do that are doing it for the big marquee shows. So I actually think there's a huge opportunity right now for us independent artists to create our own movies and our own means of distribution. And yeah, we haven't figured out the money part, but check in a year. Penny and I will be on a beach in
I
Tahiti.
this was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you so
I just
much.
feel like I have to say, like, I have very good relationships with HBO and all of these legacy institutions, and I really love them and support that they support me, and I love it. And I'm just saying, like, I feel like there's a sea change happening, and like we can move a little bit more nimbly than like some of these mega institutions can. That's all I'm saying. We can be the laboratory. We can like try out different things.
Yeah.
So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll find out in a few months how I'm trying to like re-energize like my library titles to try to like find new audiences for some of my library titles. That's one of my big goals this year. Got to look past the new releases. Like that's old school thinking.
Well, thank you so much, Penny. And I just enjoyed your Substack so much.
Thank
And
you.
I think everyone who's on this probably is already a subscriber, but if they're not,
Oh,
definitely subscribe.
thank you.
This was so lovely. Thanks to all who joined, and more soon from both of us.
Bye.
Bye.